I stood frozen as my mother's words cut through me like ice. That's far. Who's going to take care of Kendra when she needs help with her car or rent? My acceptance letter to the University of Illinois Medical Technology program, my dream school, lay crumpled in my trembling hands. In that moment, I realized a devastating truth. In my family, my independence wasn't an achievement. It was an inconvenience. I'm Lila Morrison, the reliable daughter, the quiet one, the afterthought. Growing up in small-town Indiana, I learned early that our family had unspoken roles. My younger sister Kendra was the golden child, effortlessly charming, perpetually forgiven. She dropped out of community college twice, and Mom still made excuses. Meanwhile, I was the one who didn't smile enough or worked too hard to be relatable. Our middle-class household looked perfect from the outside. Inside, it operated on comparison and favoritism. When Kendra needed new clothes, Mom took her shopping. When I needed textbooks, I worked extra shifts at the diner. Lila, can you help your sister with her homework? Mom would ask, even though I had my own assignments due. Lila, lend Kendra your car for the weekend, she'd insist, despite my weekend job. Every achievement of mine came with a shadow. That's nice, but did you hear Kendra got asked to the dance by the quarterback? Still, I loved them. I really did. I kept thinking if I just worked harder, achieved more, they'd finally see me. The day my acceptance letter arrived should have changed everything. Instead, Mom's response showed me exactly where I stood, as Kendra's backup plan, not as someone with dreams of my own. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I accepted the program offer. Have you ever been the reliable one that family only remembers when they need something? Comment below if you felt invisible to the people who should see you most. Subscribe to hear what happened when I finally stopped being the family doormat. 4 years after leaving for college, I landed my dream job as a clinical specialist for a medical company. The journey wasn't easy. Endless nights studying, unpaid internships, and certifications that drained my savings. But I made it, all on my own. My family's response to each milestone followed a pattern. My college graduation. Mom and Kendra arrived late. Left early for Kendra's friend's party. My first apartment. It's so small. Couldn't you find something nicer? My first job offer. That's not much money for all that schooling. I kept trying anyway, sending photos, making calls that went to voicemail, sending birthday cards that got no acknowledgement. Then came the opportunity that would change everything. A senior role promotion in Denver, Colorado. Double the salary, my own team. A chance to start fresh where nobody knew me as Kendra's quiet sister. The night I got the offer, I called home, heart racing with excitement. Mom, guess what? I got promoted. I'm moving to Denver. That's nice, honey. Did you hear Kendra might be getting engaged soon? I hung up, packed my small SUV with everything I owned, and drove 1,000 miles across the country alone. The entire drive, my phone stayed silent. No good luck texts, no be safe calls, nothing. As mountains appeared on the horizon, something inside me shifted. Maybe this silence was a gift. Maybe I could finally build a life without constantly seeking approval I'd never receive. My new apartment in Denver became my sanctuary, modern, with sunlight pouring through floor-to-ceiling windows each morning. I furnished it piece by piece, each item chosen by me, for me. A blue velvet couch, a small dining table where I could work late, plants that thrived under my care. For weeks, I sent photos home. Look at my new place. Check out this view. Each message showed as read but received no response. So one day I just stopped trying. The silence hurt, but it also taught me something powerful. I was capable of building a beautiful life completely on my own. And for the first time, I didn't need anyone else's approval to feel proud of myself. Denver looks good on you, Lila. My Aunt Margie's voice through the phone was like a warm blanket after months in the cold. She was the only one who called to check on me, the only one who remembered I existed. Aunt Margie was my mom's older sister, the family observer who stayed neutral during arguments, but kept score of who was right. Unlike my mother, she noticed things, like how I'd been paying my own way since 16, or how Kendra's emergencies always coincided with my achievements. "I'm proud of you," she said simply. 3 words I'd never heard from my own mother. Our calls became my lifeline. While my immediate family forgot my birthday, Aunt Margie sent a card with a gift card to my favorite coffee shop. When I got sick with pneumonia and spent 3 days in the hospital, Mom and Kendra never knew, but Aunt Margie called daily. 6 months after my move, she mentioned she'd be passing through Denver. "I'd love to see this apartment you've been telling me about." The day she visited, I cleaned frantically, arranged fresh flowers, and baked cookies from scratch. When she walked in, her eyes widened. "Oh, Lila," she whispered, taking in the mountain view, the carefully chosen furniture, the wall of professional certificates I'd framed. "You've built something beautiful here." We spent the afternoon talking, laughing. For once, no one interrupted me or changed the subject to Kendra. Before leaving, Aunt Margie asked if she could take a photo of me in my apartment. "I want to remember this," she said, snapping a picture of me smiling by the window. "Do you mind if I post this on Facebook?" she asked. "I'm just so proud." I shrugged. Sure, why not? I had no idea that simple photo would shatter my peaceful new life within hours. My phone exploded at 6:17 the next morning. 20 missed calls, 15 text messages, 3 voicemails. For a terrifying moment, I thought someone had died. Then I saw the names: Mom, Kendra, Kendra again, Mom again. My heart pounded as I answered my mother's call. "So you're living in Denver now, and you didn't tell anyone?" Her voice trembled with anger, not concern. "You think you're too good for your family?" I sat on my bed, stunned. "Mom, I texted everyone months ago about the move. I called you the night I got promoted." "Well, I don't remember that," she snapped. "We had to find out from Margie's Facebook that you've been hiding away in some fancy apartment." In the background, I heard Kendra's voice. "Wow, nice place. Must be nice when you don't have to share rent or pay for anyone else." The irony was crushing. After months of silence, no responses to my messages, no calls on holidays, suddenly I was the villain for hiding my life from them. Mom's tone shifted, softening just enough to sound manipulative. "You know, your sister's struggling right now. She and Derek just had to move out of their place. The landlord was completely unreasonable." I closed my eyes, already seeing where this was heading. "That apartment looks big for just one person," Mom continued. "You could help her. You don't need all that space for yourself." My throat tightened. The apartment I'd worked 60-hour weeks to afford. The home I'd built piece by piece. The first place that felt truly mine. "I'm not comfortable with that," I said firmly. "My apartment isn't up for discussion." Silence stretched between us. Then, "I always knew you were selfish, ever since you were little." The call ended abruptly. I sat there, phone in hand, feeling like I'd been punched. After months of no contact, their first conversation wasn't, "How are you?" or "We miss you." It was, "What can you give us?" I thought the silence had hurt, but their sudden interest felt worse. I had no idea that this call was just the beginning, that in 3 days my doorbell would ring and my worst nightmare would be standing on my doorstep. The doorbell rang on Wednesday afternoon while I was in the middle of a work call. I wasn't expecting anyone. My heart dropped when I peered through the peephole. There they stood, Mom, Kendra, and Derek, with 4 large suitcases lined up beside them. I opened the door, phone still in hand, meeting stunned. "Mom, what are you doing here?" My voice came out higher than I intended. She smiled that smile, the one that never reached her eyes. "We just came to visit. You've been so distant lately." They pushed past me before I could respond, wheeling their suitcases into my living room as if they'd been invited, as if they belonged there. "Nice place," Derek whistled, immediately dropping onto my couch and propping his feet on my coffee table. "Way nicer than the dump we just left." Kendra wandered through my apartment, opening closet doors, peeking into my bedroom. "You have so much space for just one person," she said, running her fingers over my dresser, picking up and examining the small glass elephant I'd bought to celebrate my promotion. I ended my call and took a deep breath. "You should have called first. I have meetings all day." Mom waved her hand dismissively. "Family doesn't need invitations." For the next 3 hours, they invaded every corner of my space. Kendra used my shower without asking. Derek raided my refrigerator. Mom criticized everything from my wasteful coffee maker to my overpriced couch. The worst moment came when Kendra ran her fingers over my marble kitchen counter and said, "This would make a nice space for a baby's playpen." Derek laughed, pointing to my home office. "And that would be our room if we moved in." I froze, coffee mug halfway to my lips. "If you moved in?" "Just thinking out loud," Kendra said with a shrug, but her eyes told a different story. As evening approached, I finally managed to usher them toward the door, claiming an early meeting the next day. They hadn't mentioned where they were staying, and I deliberately didn't ask. Mom turned back as they were leaving, her expression suddenly serious. "You could sell this place and help your sister. Family should come first." The door closed behind them, but their presence lingered like a bad smell. I leaned against the wall, heart pounding, suddenly understanding with perfect clarity why they'd really come. 2 weeks passed with no contact. I changed my doorbell to a camera model and jumped every time my phone rang. The invasion had left me feeling violated, as if they'd marked my sanctuary with their fingerprints. Then Aunt Margie called. Her voice sounded different, hesitant, uneasy. "Sweetheart, did your mom or Kendra tell you anything about their house situation?" "No," I said. "They just showed up at my door with suitcases, looked around like they were house hunting, then left." Aunt Margie sighed. "I thought so. There's something you need to know." What she told me next made everything click into place. Kendra and Derek had defaulted on a $60,000 loan co-signed by my mother. They'd bought a house they couldn't afford, renovated it with credit cards, then stopped making payments when Derek lost his job. Now they were facing foreclosure, and my mother's retirement savings were on the line. "Your mom put up her 401k as collateral," Aunt Margie explained. "If they can't pay, she loses everything." The pieces fell together like a cruel puzzle. The sudden interest in my life, the unexpected visit, the comments about selling my apartment. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted rescue. "So that's why they suddenly remembered I exist," I said, my voice hollow. "They need my money." Years of being overlooked, dismissed, and used crashed down on me. The birthdays they'd forgotten, the graduations they'd minimized, the promotions they'd ignored, until they needed something. "What are you going to do?" Aunt Margie asked gently. I looked around my apartment, the first place I'd ever had that was truly mine, the symbol of everything I'd worked for while they pretended I didn't exist. "I don't know yet," I answered honestly. If you've ever been treated like an ATM by family who ignored you until they needed something, hit subscribe. I want to know if you think I should have helped them or protected what I worked so hard to build. Comment below with what you would have done in my shoes, because what happened next changed everything. "Lila, honey, we need to talk about your future." My mother's voice through the phone was sweet as honey, dripping with fake concern. 3 days had passed since my conversation with Aunt Margie, and I'd been waiting for this call. I sat at my kitchen counter, watching the sun set behind the mountains. What about my future, Mom? Well, she paused dramatically. Your father and I have been thinking. Since you're doing so well with that job of yours, maybe it's time you invested in something more permanent than that apartment. My grip tightened on the phone. I like my apartment. But apartments are just throwing money away. You could buy a small house instead. That way, you'd have something to show for all your hard work. I closed my eyes, waiting for what I knew was coming next. And then, she continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, you could send Kendra something to help her start over. Just a small loan. Family helps family. There it was, the real reason for the call. Mom, I said slowly, choosing my words carefully, that apartment isn't just an apartment. It's the first thing I've ever had that's mine. I worked for it. I earned it. I'm not selling it. Silence stretched between us. Then she snapped, You're selfish. You'd let your sister be homeless while you live in luxury? What kind of daughter are you? The words hit like physical blows. The kind you raised, I answered quietly. The kind who was always there when Kendra needed homework help or money or a ride. The kind who sent birthday cards that never got acknowledgement. The kind who called every Sunday for a year after moving and eventually stopped because no one picked up. That's not fair. No, I interrupted, surprising myself. What's not fair is ignoring me for years, then expecting me to bail you out of a mess you created. We're your family, she shouted. Only when you need something, I replied. She hung up. That night I cried, not because of guilt, but because of clarity. I finally saw my family for who they were, people who only valued me when I could be useful. The realization didn't bring satisfaction. It brought grief for the family I'd never really had. A week after my mother's call, I did something I'd never done before. I posted a photo on social media, a smiling selfie in my living room with the caption, "Finally learning that peace is worth more than approval." It wasn't directed at anyone specifically. It wasn't angry or bitter. It was just true. Mom didn't comment, but I knew she saw it. Aunt Margie liked it immediately and left a heart emoji. Then something strange happened. At 2:17 a.m., my phone lit up with a text from Kendra. You'll regret turning your back on family. We always find a way. I read it 3 times, then blocked her number. The threat lingered in my mind, but I pushed it away. What could they possibly do? I'd built my life carefully, protected my finances, kept my personal information secure, or so I thought. A month later, I got a call from my building manager. Ms. Morrison, I wanted to let you know there was an incident yesterday. Someone tried to access your apartment using your old address in Indiana and some authorization papers. Security stopped them, but I thought you should know. My blood ran cold. Did they give a name? A woman named Kendra Morrison said she was your sister and needed to get something from your place while you were out of town. I thanked him, hung up, and immediately called a friend back in Indiana. What she told me made my hands shake. Kendra had been going around town telling people we were buying a house together. She'd tried to use my old documents to apply for a housing loan, claiming we were joint owners of a family property. She'd even gone to my old bank, trying to access my accounts with a fake ID. The betrayal cut deep. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was identity theft. That afternoon, I called a lawyer and had a formal cease and desist letter sent to both my mother and Kendra, warning them to stay out of my financial affairs. The letter was direct. Any further attempts to use my name, access my property, or misrepresent our relationship would result in legal action. The silence that followed was the loudest peace I'd ever known, but it wouldn't last. Lila, I just wanted to say I'm proud of you. Aunt Margie's voice cracked slightly over the phone. 3 months had passed since the cease and desist letter, and I'd buried myself in work, therapy, and self-care. For what? I asked, curling up on my window seat, watching snow fall on the Denver skyline. for having the courage to walk away from family toxicity. Not everyone can do that. I closed my eyes, letting her words wash over me. For months, I'd battled guilt and doubt, wondering if I was the villain in this story. "Your mom doesn't talk to me anymore," Aunt Margie continued. "She said I betrayed her for supporting you." My heart sank. "I'm so sorry. I never meant to come between you two." "Don't you dare apologize," she said firmly. "Ruth has been using people her whole life. I watched her do it to you since you were a little girl. I should have spoken up sooner." Her voice trembled, but I could hear her smile through it. "I'd rather stand with truth than manipulation." That call meant everything, because in that moment, I realized something powerful. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the person who sees your worth when others don't. "Thank you," I whispered, "for being the one adult in my life who actually saw me." "I always saw you, Lila, even when you couldn't see yourself." After we hung up, I stood at my window for a long time, watching snowflakes dance in the streetlights. For the first time, I understood that my revenge against my family's treatment wasn't going to come through anger or public humiliation. It was already happening through silence, distance, and success. By choosing myself, I'd already won. Spring arrived with unexpected news: a promotion to regional director. My team had exceeded every target, and leadership noticed. The promotion came with a substantial raise, more responsibility, and validation that I was on the right path. As I sat in my boss's office, hearing her praise my work ethic and leadership skills, I thought about how different this recognition felt from anything I'd experienced growing up. "You've earned this, Lila," she said. "Your ability to stay focused, despite personal challenges this year, has been remarkable." She didn't know the details of my family situation, but she'd noticed the days I came in with red eyes or stayed late to avoid going home to an empty apartment. That evening, I walked through a furniture store and bought myself a gift: a beautiful desk for my home office. Not because I needed it, but because I deserved it. By the time summer arrived, I'd developed boundaries so firm that no emotional manipulation could break through them. I'd learned to recognize guilt trips before they landed. I'd stopped apologizing for my success. I made new friends, people who celebrated my victories instead of diminishing them. I joined a hiking group and discovered I loved the feeling of reaching a summit, looking out over the world below. My apartment evolved too. What started as a blank canvas became a true reflection of who I was becoming. Plants thrived on every windowsill. Art I loved hung on the walls. Books I actually wanted to read filled the shelves. One evening, as I watered my plants, I realized I hadn't thought about my mother or Kendra in weeks. The pain hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into something quieter, less consuming. I was healing. I had no idea that the universe was about to test that healing in the most unexpected way, with a handwritten letter that would arrive in my mailbox and force me to make the hardest decision of my life. The envelope sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I found the courage to open it. Plain white, my name and address written in my mother's unmistakable handwriting. No return address, but I knew exactly who it was from. Nearly a year had passed since I'd heard from any of them. A year of peace, growth, and healing. When I finally tore it open, my hands trembled. "Lila," the letter began. "No dear, no I miss you, just my name. I'm writing because something has happened that you need to know about. Kendra has been arrested for fraud and identity theft." My coffee mug slipped from my fingers, shattering on the floor. I kept reading. "The police showed up at her apartment last Tuesday. They had evidence she'd been opening credit cards and taking out loans in other people's names. One of the victims listed on the police report is you." The room seemed to tilt. I grabbed the counter to steady myself. "They found copies of your driver's license, your work ID, and papers with your social security number. She had credit cards in your name with over $30,000 in charges. I sank to the floor, coffee seeping into my pajama pants. All those months of silence, she'd been stealing my identity, using my good credit to fund whatever chaos she and Derek were creating. The letter continued, my mother's handwriting growing more desperate with each line. She's facing serious charges. The prosecutor is talking about prison time. Your sister made mistakes, but she doesn't deserve this. She's young. She has her whole life ahead of her. Then came the plea I should have expected. Please don't press charges. She's your sister. Family should come first. If you tell them you don't want to pursue this, they might reduce the charges. Please, Lila, do this for me. The letter ended there. No apology. No acknowledgement of how Kendra's actions had affected me. Just another demand disguised as family obligation. I sat on my kitchen floor surrounded by broken ceramic and spilled coffee, a perfect metaphor for what my family had done to my life, but this time something inside me didn't break. It hardened. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced my apartment, the letter burning a hole in my mind. Part of me, the little girl who still craved her mother's approval, whispered that maybe this was my chance to reconcile. Maybe if I helped Kendra, they'd finally see my worth. But the woman I'd become knew better. I called Aunt Margie the next morning. They want me to drop the charges, I told her, voice hollow. Mom says family should come first. Aunt Margie was quiet for a moment. What do you think family means, Lila? The question caught me off guard. I don't know anymore. Let me tell you what I think, she said gently. Family means respect. It means celebrating each other's victories instead of being jealous. It means showing up when things are hard, not just when you need something. Tears slid down my cheeks. Has your mother or Kendra ever done those things for you? She asked. We both knew the answer. What would you tell a friend in your situation? She continued. I'd tell them they deserve better, I whispered. That real love doesn't steal from you or try to control you. Then why would you tell yourself anything different? After we hung up, I sat at my window watching the city lights flicker on as dusk fell. I thought about the little girl I'd been, always trying to earn love that should have been freely given. I thought about Kendra, who'd been taught her entire life that rules didn't apply to her, that someone would always clean up her messes. I thought about my mother, who'd enabled and encouraged this dynamic until it had spiraled into criminal behavior. And I thought about myself, how far I'd come, how hard I'd worked to build a life of peace and integrity. The decision crystallized with perfect clarity. I took out a piece of paper, wrote one line on it, and slipped it into an envelope addressed to my mother. Family comes first, when they act like family. The next morning, I called the detective handling the case and told him I wanted to proceed with pressing charges. I would cooperate fully with their investigation. For the first time in my life, I wasn't choosing between my family and myself. I was choosing justice. The courthouse hallway felt endless as I walked toward courtroom C, my heels clicking against the marble floor. 3 months had passed since I'd decided to press charges, and today was Kendra's hearing. I hadn't planned to attend. My statement was already on record, the evidence overwhelming. But something pulled me there. Not revenge, but a need for closure. I slipped into the back row just as the proceedings began. That's when I saw them, my mother and Kendra, sitting at the defendant's table. Mom looked older, her shoulders hunched. Kendra stared straight ahead, her expression blank. Neither of them noticed me. The prosecutor outlined the case methodically. 6 victims, over $120,000 in fraudulent charges, identity theft crossing state lines. The evidence against Kendra was damning. Copies of my driver's license with her photo poorly photoshopped over mine, credit card statements sent to a P.O. box she'd opened, loan applications with forged signatures. When the judge asked how she pled, Kendra's voice was small but clear. Guilty. Part of me had expected her to fight, to lie, to blame someone else. Her admission caught me off guard. During a brief recess, I stepped into the hallway for air. That's when my mother spotted me. "You actually came to watch her suffer?" she hissed, approaching me with fury in her eyes. "Are you happy now?" I met her gaze steadily. "I'm not happy about any of this." "You could have stopped it. One word from you and the charges would have been reduced." "And what would that have taught her?" I asked quietly. "That she can steal from people and face no consequences? That I'll always be there to clean up her messes?" Mom's face contorted. "She's going to prison because of you." "She's going to prison because of her choices," I corrected. "And yours." She recoiled as if I'd slapped her. "You enabled this her entire life, Mom. You taught her she was special, that rules didn't apply to her." This is where that road leads. A court officer called everyone back inside. My mother turned away without another word. I didn't stay for the sentencing. I'd said what I needed to say. As I walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun, I blocked both their numbers on my phone. 2 years can change everything. 2 years of therapy, helping me understand that I wasn't responsible for my family's choices. 2 years of building friendships with people who celebrate my successes instead of resenting them. 2 years of peace, uninterrupted by manipulation or guilt trips. My Denver apartment still stands, not just as a home, but as a symbol of everything I fought for: freedom, boundaries, and self-worth. I learned that Kendra served 14 months of a 3-year sentence before being released on probation. My mother sold her house to pay legal fees. They moved to Florida afterward. I know this only because Aunt Margie keeps loose tabs on them, though she rarely mentions them unless I ask. Sometimes I still scroll through old messages, remembering the little girl who once begged for love and validation from people who were emotionally unavailable. I remember birthdays spent waiting for calls that never came, achievements met with indifference, and the crushing realization that I was only valuable when I was useful. The pain hasn't disappeared completely. Some days it rises unexpectedly, when I see mothers and daughters shopping together, or when colleagues talk about going home for holidays. But therapy taught me something powerful. Grief and healing can coexist. I can mourn the family I wished I had while celebrating the life I've built without them. I've learned to parent myself in ways my mother never did, to speak kindly to myself when I make mistakes, to celebrate my victories no matter how small, to set boundaries without guilt. Last month, I bought a small house in the mountains outside Denver, a place with a garden and a view that takes my breath away every morning. I didn't tell my family. They wouldn't have cared anyway. But I told Aunt Margie, who drove out to help me move. We spent the weekend arranging furniture, hanging curtains, and planting flowers in the garden. "This place suits you," she said, hugging me tight. "It feels like peace." She was right. It does. Last week, a package arrived at my door. Inside was a small glass elephant, identical to the one Kendra had handled in my apartment years ago, the one that later disappeared. A note accompanied it. "Found this while cleaning out Mom's storage unit. Thought you might want it back. K." No apology. No explanation of how it ended up in my mother's possession. Just the elephant, returned without context. I placed it on my mantel and studied it for a long time. 3 years ago, this small theft had infuriated me, another example of my family taking what was mine without permission. Now I felt nothing but a quiet acknowledgement. The elephant no longer held power over me. That's when I realized something profound about revenge. True revenge isn't about making others suffer. It's about reaching a place where their actions can no longer hurt you. My revenge wasn't pressing charges against Kendra, though that was necessary. It wasn't cutting contact with my mother, though that was healing. My revenge was the life I built afterward. a life so full and peaceful that their absence became a blessing rather than a wound. When I look around my mountain home now, I see evidence of my growth everywhere. Bookshelves filled with volumes I've actually read, not just displayed to impress others. Photos of hiking trips with friends who know the real me. A garden I tend each morning, watching things grow under my care. Sometimes people ask if I miss my family. The honest answer is complicated. I miss the idea of family, the mother who should have championed me, the sister who could have been my friend. But I don't miss the reality of who they actually were. That little girl who once begged for love and validation has grown quiet. Because today I know this truth. Revenge doesn't always come from destruction. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is peace, distance, and success so undeniable that silence becomes their only response. So when I watch the sunset from my deck now, bathed in the soft glow of evening light, I smile. Not because I proved them wrong, but because I finally stopped needing to. The glass elephant sits on my mantle not as a reminder of what was taken, but as proof of how far I've come. Some might call that forgiveness. I call it freedom. Have you ever had to walk away from toxic family to save yourself? Comment below with your story. I read every comment. And if you're still struggling with family who only values what you can give them, subscribe for more stories about finding peace after betrayal. Sometimes the family we choose gives us more love than the family we're born into.